Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we are going
Diving.
diving,
Yes.
diving exactly into a paper called An Examination of Hidden Connections and Unified Intent in Global Television and Cinema
Yes.
by Forgettable Soul.
That's right.
This one really, I don't know.
It's a doozy.
It's a doozy, yeah. This paper is suggesting that there's a hidden message kind of
Mm.
woven into a
Yeah.
lot of the TV and films.
Popular.
Global. Popular global, yes, thank you.
It's.
TV and films that we watch.
Hmm.
And not only that, but that it has a very specific goal in
Yes.
mind.
Yes.
I've got to say, going into this,
It's a bold claim.
it's a bold claim. Yeah, and I was a little bit,
Skeptic.
skeptical.
Of course.
But, Forgettable Soul goes about this in a
Mhm.
way it's pretty methodical.
Forgettable Soul uses semiotics, narrative analysis, cultural impacts,
Whoa.
studies, and even a comparative thematic review across genres.
Okay, so Forgettable Soul is bringing out the big guns for this analysis. I am intrigued.
What I find particularly fascinating is how this paper tackles the whole idea of global media. I mean, think about it. In today's world, with on demand entertainment at our fingertips, TV and film aren't just passive activities anymore. They become these really potent forces that shape how we see the world, how we connect with each other.
Oh, absolutely. Like, when was the last time you had a chat about Squid Game or Avatar? Those conversations can get pretty deep.
Exactly. They spark debate, influence our opinions, even shape our understanding of really complex issues. Forgettable Soul argues that this influence, the shared experience we have through media, it's more than just entertainment.
Okay, so we're talking about something deeper, something more intentional than just entertainment for entertainment's sake.
Right. Forgettable Soul's main argument is that there's a deliberate goal, a calculated purpose behind this potential hidden message in global media.
So it's not just about spotting familiar themes or tropes. It's about figuring out why those themes are so prevalent and what their intended effect might be.
Exactly. Forgettable Soul isn't just identifying patterns, they're trying to crack the code, understand the why behind the what.
That's a great way to put it, cracking the code. So how does Forgettable Soul go about this? What's their methodology for uncovering this potential hidden message?
Well, to be honest, they don't rely on just one method. They've got a whole arsenal of analytical tools they use. First off, there's semiotic analysis, which is basically like being a detective of symbols and themes. They look at what pops up again and again and try to figure out what those recurring elements might mean.
So like looking for those recurring motifs, those narrative echoes that might be hinting at something more.
Exactly. Then they dive into narrative and archetypal analysis. This is where they examine the bones of the story, the common plot structures, those classic character archetypes. They're looking for patterns, for those underlying messages embedded in the way stories are told.
It's like they're piecing together a giant puzzle, using those recurring elements and storytelling techniques as clues.
Precisely. And to make things even more interesting, they also delve into cultural impact and reception analysis.
So like how these films and shows land with audiences globally,
Hmm.
how people are interpreting them, talking about them, and ultimately how those interpretations are shaping our understanding of the world.
Exactly. They're tracing the ripple effect of these narratives, how they spread and influence perspectives on a global scale.
Okay, that's some next level analysis,
Yeah.
but they don't stop there, do
Hey,
they?
there's more. Finally, Forgettable Soul does this really cool thing. They do a comparative thematic review. We're talking sci-fi, fantasy, crime dramas, superhero flicks, even psychological thrillers. They're looking for those common threads, those thematic echoes across wildly different genres.
It's like they're creating this giant tapestry of storytelling, pulling threads from all these different genres to see what patterns emerge. So what did they find? What are some of these recurring themes Forgettable Soul uncovered? I need to know.
Get ready, because this is where things get really interesting. One of the most prominent themes Forgettable Soul identifies is the prevalence of apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic narratives. We're talking shows like The Walking Dead, The Last of Us, those gritty survival in a fallen world kind of stories. And of course, we can't forget those iconic films like Mad Max and Children of Men.
It's true. It seems like almost every other show throws humanity into chaos and then forces us to watch how we, or at least how the characters, pick up the pieces. So, what's Forgettable Soul's take on that? Are they suggesting this obsession with dystopian futures is conditioning us to expect a similar fate?
It's definitely a question worth pondering. Are we as a culture so bombarded with images of societal collapse that we're starting to internalize that fear, that sense of inevitable doom?
It's a bit unsettling when you think about it. I mean, I love a good dystopian thriller as much as the next person. But are we becoming desensitized to the potential for chaos and collapse in our own world?
That's the million-dollar question, and it gets
Hmm.
even more intriguing.
Oh, I bet it does.
Yeah.
Okay, hit me with the next recurring theme. This deep dive just keeps getting deeper.
All right, but brace yourself. This next one taps into our love for those larger-than-life heroes. We're talking about heroic archetypes and sacrifice.
Okay, you're speaking my language now. I'm a sucker for a good hero's journey, but I have a feeling I know where you're going with this.
Hmm.
Is Forgettable Souls suggesting that this constant focus on extraordinary individuals saving the day is influencing how we view our own role in society?
You hit the nail on the head. Forgettable Soul points out how often we see those classic heroes, those chosen ones, making incredible sacrifices for the sake of humanity. It makes you wonder, are we subliminally absorbing the message that our individual actions don't hold as much weight? Because in the end, a hero will always emerge to set things right.
Whoa, okay, that's a bit of a chilling thought. Like, we're just passively waiting for a real-life superhero to swoop in and save us from ourselves. It
Oh,
makes you question how much agency we're willing to relinquish, you know?
absolutely. And it makes you think about the responsibility we have as individuals to be active participants in shaping our world, not just passive bystanders waiting for someone else to fix things.
This is heavy stuff. All right, what's next on Forgettable Souls' list of recurring themes?
Hold on to your hats, because this one hits close to home, especially in today's tech-driven world. Surveillance, control, and power structures.
Oh boy. Yeah, this is a big one. We're talking about shows like Black Mirror and Westworld, right? The ones that really make you question the trade-offs between convenience and privacy in the age of technology. Those shows definitely stay with you long after the credits roll.
You said it. Forgettable Soul observes that these themes aren't confined to some distant dystopian future anymore. They're weaving their way into the very fabric of our current reality, blurring those lines between fiction and, well, the news headlines.
It's like those stories are holding up a mirror, reflecting our deepest anxieties about data collection, algorithms, facial recognition, AI, all those things we have this love-hate relationship with. Like, we can't live without them, but we don't entirely trust them either, and with good reason.
Exactly. And as technology continues to evolve at this breakneck speed, it's a valid concern. Are we sacrificing our privacy, our autonomy at the altar of convenience?
Okay, I'm definitely starting to see those common threads Forgettable Soul is talking about. What else did the research uncover?
This one might surprise you. Get ready for it. Escapism into virtual worlds.
Wait, really? I always thought escapism was a good thing. A little harmless fun to take our minds off the stresses of everyday life. What's the issue with a bit of escapism?
It's not necessarily that escapism is inherently bad, but Forgettable Soul raises some intriguing questions about its potential consequences, especially now when the lines between reality and virtuality are becoming increasingly blurred. Think about films like The Matrix, Ready Player One, or even shows like Stranger Things. They all tack into this idea of escaping into alternate realities, and they make us question what's real and what's not.
Okay, I see what you mean. As we spend more and more time in these digital spaces, engaging in virtual and augmented reality, is there a risk we're losing touch with the nuances and complexities of the real world?
That's the question Forgettable Soul is posing. Are we becoming so enamored by the allure of virtual experiences that we're losing sight of the tangible, the visceral, the messy beauty of the world around us?
Wow, this deep dive is full of twists and turns I didn't see coming. All right, what's the final recurring theme Forgettable Soul uncovers?
Get ready for this one because it's a biggie. We're talking about interconnected universes. Those sprawling narratives with intricate storylines and ever-expanding casts of characters that seem to dominate the entertainment landscape these days.
Okay, you've got my attention. I'll admit I'm a sucker for a good interconnected universe. But what's the deeper meaning Forgettable Soul is suggesting here?
It's subtle but potent. Forgettable Soul proposes that these interconnected universes, with their complex webs of events and characters, might be subtly conditioning us to view our world as predetermined, shaped by forces beyond our control or comprehension.
So instead of just enjoying the ride, we should be questioning if these elaborate narratives are influencing how we perceive our own reality, making us more accepting of complexity and less likely to question the powers that be. Wow, that's a lot to unpack. We've covered a lot of ground here, exploring those recurring themes Forgettable Soul has identified.
Welcome back, deep divers. We left off talking about those recurring themes in global media that Forgettable Soul identifies. It's pretty fascinating stuff.
It is fascinating. But
Yeah.
it's also a little unsettling, right? Like, are we really suggesting that watching too much TV can actually change how we think?
Well, it's not quite as simple as that. Forgettable Soul's point is that these narratives we consume, they don't just disappear when the credits roll. They linger in our minds. They become part of our cultural vocabulary. And over time, they can subtly shape how we view the world, how we interpret events, even how we make decisions.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like the more we're exposed to a certain idea or perspective, the more it becomes normalized in our minds, even if we don't consciously realize it's happening. But what's the big deal? I mean, so what if we enjoy a good dystopian thriller or root for a lone hero fighting against all odds? Is that really going to turn us into mindless drones or something?
Forgettable Soul doesn't go that far. But they do suggest that this constant exposure to narratives of societal collapse, technological control, and heroic sacrifice might make us more likely to accept these things as inevitable, even desirable, in our own lives.
Okay, now you're freaking me out a little bit. Are you saying that watching too much Black Mirror could make me okay with living in a surveillance state? Because I'm not okay with that.
It's not about any one show in particular, and it's definitely not about saying that everyone who enjoys these types of stories is going to turn into some dystopian nightmare scenario. It's more nuanced than that. Forgettable Soul's point is that we need to be aware of the potential influence these narratives have. We need to be critical consumers of media, not just passive sponges soaking it all up without a second thought.
So how do we do that?
Oh.
How do we become more critical consumers of media, especially in a world where we're constantly bombarded with content from all directions?
Well, for starters, it's about asking questions. Why am I drawn to this particular story? What are the underlying messages being conveyed? How does it make me feel? What assumptions does it make about the world and my place in it?
So basically, don't check your brain at the door when you sit down for a movie marathon. Engage with the content, analyze it, question it.
Exactly. And it's also about diversifying your media diet. Don't just stick to one genre or one type of story. Explore different perspectives, challenge your own assumptions, and be open to seeing the world through different lenses.
That's great advice. And it's something we can all do, regardless of our media preferences. But it's not just about us as individuals, right?
Yeah.
Forgettable Soul also talks about the bigger picture, the implications of these themes for society as a whole.
Absolutely. Forgettable Soul argues that if this hidden message of control and the fragility of order becomes pervasive enough, it can have a profound impact on how we structure our societies, how we govern ourselves, and how we view the role of power and authority.
Okay, now we're getting into some serious territory. Are we talking about a world where people are so conditioned to expect chaos and collapse that they willingly surrender their freedoms in exchange for the illusion of safety and security?
It's a disturbing thought, isn't it? But it's not entirely outside the realm of possibility. Think about it. If we're constantly bombarded with narratives that equate control with safety, surveillance with security, and sacrifice with heroism, it's not a huge leap to imagine a world where those ideas become deeply ingrained in our collective psyche.
So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Oh.
The more we see these narratives play out on screen, the more likely we are to manifest them in our own reality.
In a way, yes. And it's not just about overt authoritarianism or totalitarian regimes. It's about the subtle ways in which control can seep into our lives, often with our consent or even our encouragement.
Like the slow erosion of privacy in the name of convenience or security.
Precisely. And the normalization of surveillance, the acceptance of censorship under the guise of protection, the willingness to trade freedom for the illusion of order.
It's chilling when you think about it. But if this hidden message is as pervasive and influential as Forgettable Soul suggests, what can we do about it? How do we fight back against this tide of control and manipulation?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's something we'll explore in more detail when we return for the final part of our deep dive.
Welcome back, deep divers. We're in the thick of it now, really starting to unpack the implications of Forgettable Soul's research. We've talked about the themes themselves, how they might be impacting us as viewers, even shaping society at large. But there's one piece of the puzzle we haven't quite figured out yet.
Right, we've got to talk about the creators behind these stories.
Exactly. Are they intentionally weaving this hidden message into our entertainment, or are they just reflecting the anxieties of our time? Is this a grand conspiracy or a collective subconscious bubbling to the surface?
It's the age-old question, isn't it? Art imitating life or life imitating art? And Forgettable Soul doesn't pretend to have all the answers. Instead, they offer some really intriguing avenues for further research.
Okay, I'm all ears. What kind of research are we talking about?
Well, for one, they suggest more genre specific studies. By really digging deep into how these themes play out across different genres, we might get a clearer picture of the motivations behind them. For example, a zombie apocalypse might lend itself to themes of societal collapse and survival, while a superhero flick might naturally gravitate towards ideas of sacrifice and control. It's about understanding the nuances within each genre.
That makes a lot of sense. Like, some of those themes might feel like a natural fit for certain genres, even if their constant repetition across the board does raise some eyebrows.
Exactly. And that's where things get even more interesting. Forgettable Souls suggests we need longitudinal studies, studies that track viewer perception over time. Imagine being able to see how people's views on surveillance, control, even authoritarianism shift in relation to their media consumption.
That would be fascinating. Like, if there's a correlation between the amount of dystopian content someone consumes and their comfort level with things like surveillance in the real world.
Precisely. That kind of data could really help us understand the subtle ways media might be shaping our perceptions and behaviors. And there's one more area of research Forgettable Soul highlights as crucial.
Okay, lay it on me. What else do we need to explore?
This one's big. We need to understand the motivations of the content creators themselves. We need to go beyond analyzing the text and delve into the minds of the writers, directors, producers, the people shaping these narratives.
So it's not enough to just dissect the stories, we need to understand the storytellers.
Exactly. By learning more about their backgrounds, their worldviews, their creative processes, we can start to piece together the complex web of factors that influence the stories we consume.
That's a great point. It's about getting the full picture, understanding the human element behind these large-scale narratives. Because at the end of the day, Forgettable Soul isn't out to condemn Hollywood or demonize our favorite forms of entertainment.
Right, it's not about pointing fingers or making accusations. It's about fostering a more critical and nuanced understanding of the media we consume and how it might be shaping our world.
It's about asking the tough questions, being aware of the potential for influence, and making conscious choices about the stories we allow to shape our perceptions.
Well said, and I think that's a great note to end on.
I agree. This deep dive has been quite the eye-opener, and I want to thank you, our amazing listeners, for joining us on this thought-provoking journey.
Absolutely. Remember, knowledge is power. The more we understand about how media works, the more empowered we are to make informed choices and shape a future where technology serves humanity, not the other way around.
To all our deep divers out there, thanks for tuning in, and keep those critical thinking caps on.